Marcus Hale had built his empire from nothing. 14-hour days, cold coffee, and a stubbornness that most people mistook for arrogance. By 42, he sat at the top of a Fortune 500 company, wore suits that cost more than most people's rent, and had learned to keep his world small and controlled. But none of that, not the boardrooms, not the billion-dollar deals, not the newspaper headlines, had prepared him for the moment his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, stopped speaking. It happened 8 months ago, 3 weeks after her mother walked out. The doctors called it selective mutism, a response to emotional trauma. Marcus called it the most terrifying thing he had ever faced, and he had faced bankruptcy twice. He could negotiate with banks. He had no idea how to negotiate with silence. So every Saturday, he took her somewhere new. Not because the therapist told him to, though she had, but because Lily used to love going places. She used to point at things and name them with this wild, joyful urgency, like the world was a gift she wanted to unwrap as fast as possible. He kept taking her places, hoping she'd want to unwrap it again. That particular Saturday, he chose a small family restaurant on the edge of town called Rosie's. Nothing fancy, checkered tablecloths, the smell of real butter and something baking. Marcus had driven past it 100 times and never gone in. It felt like the kind of place that remembered your name. He held Lily's hand as they walked through the door. She was wearing her yellow dress, the one she'd picked out herself before everything changed. She still chose it sometimes. He took that as a good sign. They slid into a corner booth. Lily sat across from him, her dark eyes moving slowly around the room, taking inventory the way she always did. A habit she'd developed in the silence, watching more carefully because she wasn't speaking. Marcus handed her the children's menu and watched her trace the pictures with her fingertip. If you believe in kindness and the idea that a single moment can change everything, go ahead and hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from, and subscribe to the Kindness channel. We're building something real here, a community that still believes in the goodness of people. Now, let's get back to Marcus and Lily. The restaurant wasn't crowded. A few older couples, a woman with twins in high chairs, and at the table directly beside theirs, a man, maybe mid-30s, sitting with a little girl who looked about Lily's age. The man had tired eyes and a kind face, the kind that had clearly smiled a lot but was working hard to get there today. The little girl beside him was talking in animated whispers, showing him something she'd drawn on a paper napkin. Marcus ordered for both himself and Lily. She pointed to the pancakes on the menu and held up 2 fingers, her way of saying she wanted the short stack. He told the waitress. The waitress smiled warmly and didn't make it weird, didn't look at Lily with that particular brand of pity that Marcus had come to recognize and quietly dread. He appreciated that more than she'd ever know. Food came. The restaurant hummed around them. And then Marcus noticed the man at the next table leaning forward, lowering his voice, saying something soft and patient to his daughter. The little girl had knocked her orange juice off the table. It crashed and spread across the floor in a wide, sticky river. The little girl's face crumpled immediately, the way children's faces do when embarrassment hits before they've learned to hide it. She looked like she was about to cry. The man didn't flinch, didn't look around to check who was watching. He just cupped his hand gently around the back of his daughter's head and said something that made her shoulders drop with relief. Then he looked up to find the waitress and accidentally made eye contact with Marcus instead. For a second, neither of them moved. Then the man said quietly, almost apologetically, "Sorry about that. Long morning." Marcus shook his head. "Don't worry about it." A pause. And then the man looked at Lily, not with pity, not with the clinical curiosity Marcus had grown used to, just a simple, easy glance, the kind you'd give any child sitting quietly. Then he looked back at his daughter, who was now watching Lily too. His daughter whispered something. He whispered back. Then, very carefully, she leaned slightly toward the booth divider and held up her paper napkin toward Lily. On it, she'd drawn what appeared to be a dog wearing a hat. Lily looked at the drawing for a long moment. Marcus held his breath. He'd learned not to push, not to fill the air with encouraging words. He just waited. Lily reached slowly into her bag, pulled out the small sketchbook she carried everywhere, and opened it to a blank page. She picked up a crayon, the orange one, and began drawing. It took about 2 minutes. Then she carefully tore the page out and held it across the divider. She had drawn the dog back, but in her version, the dog had a friend, a smaller dog, also wearing a hat. The little girl lit up like sunrise. She grabbed her dad's arm and showed him, speaking too quickly to be understood. The man looked at the drawing and then looked at Lily with something warm and quiet in his expression. "That's beautiful," he said. "Just that. Not loud, not performative. Just the truth." And Marcus, who had held it together through 8 months of therapy appointments and sleepless nights and business meetings where he pretended his world was fine, Marcus felt something move in his chest that he didn't have a name for. He pressed his fist briefly against his mouth and looked out the window. When he looked back, the man was watching him. Not intrusively, more like he recognized something. "Single dad?" the man asked. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, me too." He extended a hand across the narrow space between tables. "Daniel, Marcus." They shook hands like men who had both been carrying heavy things for too long and had suddenly, unexpectedly put them down in the same place. "She stopped talking 8 months ago," Marcus said. He didn't know why he said it. He almost never told strangers. But something about the way Daniel had looked at Lily's drawing, without fixing anything, without solving anything, made it feel safe. After her mom left, the doctors say it's trauma. She understands everything. She just doesn't speak. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My daughter didn't leave her room for 3 months after her mom passed, wouldn't even open the curtains." He glanced at his daughter, who was now carefully attempting to draw another dog on a fresh napkin, tongue pressed between her teeth in concentration. "One day she just came out. I don't know what changed. I don't think anything specific did. I just kept showing up." Marcus looked at him. "That's all you did?" "That's all I knew how to do." The words settled between them like something solid. Across the table, Lily was watching the other little girl draw. And then, without any warning, without any build-up, she said one word, small and quiet, barely above a breath, but unmistakably real. She said, "More." She was looking at the crayon in the other girl's hand, the orange one. She wanted another color. The world didn't stop. No music played. The restaurant kept humming, the butter kept melting, the twins in the high chairs kept babbling across the room. But Marcus stopped breathing entirely for 3 full seconds. Daniel's daughter looked up, looked at Lily, then looked at her dad. Daniel reached calmly into his daughter's crayon pouch and held a purple one across the divider. His face was soft, relaxed, like this was ordinary, like he understood exactly what to do with a fragile moment, which was to treat it like it wasn't fragile at all. Lily reached out and took it. She looked down at her sketchbook, and she started drawing again. Her hand moved quickly now, with something that looked unmistakably like urgency, like joy. Marcus finally exhaled. He covered his eyes with one hand. His shoulders shook once, silently. He was not a man who cried in public. He was not a man who cried much at all. But something had been loosened inside him, and he couldn't find the valve to close it back up. When he looked up, Daniel had turned back to his own daughter. He was pointing at something in her drawing, asking a question, giving Marcus the grace of privacy in the middle of a crowded room. Marcus sat there in that corner booth, in a restaurant he'd driven past 100 times, watching his daughter draw with a purple crayon she'd asked a stranger for, and he thought, not for the first time but more clearly than ever before, that the most important things in life don't happen in boardrooms. They happen in ordinary places, at ordinary tables, between ordinary people who decide without any fanfare to be gentle with each other. Before they left, Marcus stopped at Daniel's table. He looked down at the 2 little girls who had lined up 4 napkin drawings in a row between them like a gallery. He reached into his jacket pocket. He was not a man who handed out business cards in restaurants, but he wrote his personal number on the back of one and set it on the table. "I don't really have friends," he said, with a self-awareness that surprised even him. "But I think my daughter might need yours." Daniel picked up the card, smiled slowly. "Yeah," he said, "I think so too." On the way to the car, Lily held Marcus's hand the way she always did, but right before he buckled her in, she looked up at him and said one more word. This one wasn't a request. It wasn't directed at anyone else. She just said it, quietly, into the afternoon air between them. She said, "Again." And Marcus smiled, fully, without effort, for the first time in 8 months, and said, "Yeah, baby, we'll come back." If this story moved you even a little, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to the Kindness channel. We believe that small moments of human decency are worth celebrating, and we want to fill this space with exactly that. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and tell us about a moment when a stranger's kindness changed your day. We read every single one. See you in the next story.